and call to order this April the 10th, 2019 meeting of the Franklin County Commission. Roll call.
Mr. Stallmeyer.
Present.
Mr. Waymire.
Present.
Chair Howard.
Present.
Vice Chair Dickinson. Commissioner Dunn.
Present. If you'd all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing for the invocation that will be led by Pastor Mark Hutton of the Westminster Presbyterian Church. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Let's pray. Divine Presence, we give you thanks for you being with us this day, for your presence in this room, for your presence in our county, for your presence in our world. As creation brings forth new life in this time of spring, we see the evidence of your handiwork and give you thanks and praise for the beauty that you bring into our lives. God, we give you thanks for the blessing that you give us for allowing us to live in a place like Franklin County, a place full of good people, a place that is growing and thriving, a place that is being led by strong servants. God, may you be with them this day in ways that they feel you, and that you will guide them in the decisions that they are to make, so that the citizens of Franklin County will be blessed, so that our economy will grow, so that our lives will be enriched, but more importantly, so that you will be blessed. So God, may each person here know your peace and love. We pray this in your precious and holy name. Amen.
It takes us to response and organizational announcements this morning. We're going to receive a quarterly update from the Franklin County Conservation District. Carrie.
I feel like I'm getting to be a regular here lately, but thanks for giving me time again this morning. 2019 started out with 7 of the 9 USDA Service Center employees on furlough. The FSA staff was off work from December 21st through January 23rd, but during that time I was able to continue working at the office to try to provide services as normal as possible to all the customers in Franklin County who stopped by or called into the office. It was a little hectic, but we got everybody the information they needed and finally got FSA staff back to work. Malcolm Jones, who was in our office serving as the NRCS district conservationist, was promoted to a resource specialist with NRCS, which moved him to Perry, Oklahoma. His last day was December 21st. That position is still vacant, but we finally saw a vacancy announcement on Monday. Unfortunately, the hiring process is very lengthy, so we anticipate several more weeks of that position being unfilled. In the meantime, conservation technician Kent Scott and myself have been working diligently to provide the landowners in Franklin County the services needed to address resource concerns for conservation implementation. The NRCS and Conservation District Office had a staff of 4 full-time employees in June of 2017, and we are now down to just the 2. Workload continues to be enough for 4 or more employees, so needless to say, we're pretty busy. The good thing about the staff shortages is that we were still able to log 126 volunteer hours during the first quarter of 2019. We have been assisting with processing 19 new Environmental Quality Incentive Program applications. These applications are in the final stages before receiving approval, which is slated for early May. Projects in these applications include soil health practices such as cover crops, erosion and sediment control practices, forest stand improvement, monarch habitat development, pasture management projects including livestock water supply development, rotational grazing, and interior cross fence, as well as brush management practices. In January, the board decided to trade in our 2014 no-till drill and purchased a new 2018 Great Plains drill for $9,450 after trade-in of the old drill. The board decided to stay with a 6-foot drill as we found it to be more accessible for homeowners, hobby farmers, and even those with small acreages that they are managing for wildlife. If the weather ever cooperates and dries up a little bit, the drill will probably be very busy. I've had many phone calls indicating as soon as my field is dry, I will call back to get on the schedule. We have sold just short of $4,000 worth of custom blended seed for pollinator habitat, pasture seeding, and summer forage seed mixes already this year and have a scheduled delivery today as well. I assisted with the annual Johnson County Slice of Ag event, which is set up much like our Day on the Farm, but held at the Overland Park Convention Center. I presented the soil tunnel trailer to 565 students in one day at that event. We received $3,300 in donations in January that helped cover the expenses for our annual meeting. Additional funds were used to provide the lunch at the prescribed burn workshop that we hosted on March 6th, and will also assist with lunches for our nearly 30 volunteers next week at our 15th annual Franklin County Earth Day Festival. We celebrated 78 years of conservation in Franklin County with 93 Friends of Conservation at our annual meeting on January 31st. During that meeting, a public election was held, and Dwayne McGowan was re-elected to another 3-year term on the Conservation District Board of Supervisors. The Conservation District was honored to include the Franklin County Bankers Award presentation as part of our meeting. The Kansas Bankers Award for Soil Conservation was presented to SF Farms, Sherry Froggatt, Jeff, Jody, and Stephen White, as well as Joe and Judith Maloney. In addition to the 2 Bankers Awards, the Conservation District presented the Franklin County Conservation District Grassland Award to Bicklemeyer Land and Cattle, Silkville Ranch, and their ranch manager, Lowell Anderson. The Kansas Association of Conservation Districts held a Conservation Day at the Capitol on February 20th. I was able to attend and represent Franklin County, and while there, had the opportunity to visit with Representative Blaine Finch, Mark Samsel, Kyle Hoffman, Ken Rogers, and Doug Blex. Copies of the Franklin County Annual Report and Annual Meeting Program were provided to all the representatives I met with, and copies were also left for Senator Tyson and Senator Hensley. Coincidentally, on February 20th, while we were at the Capitol, there was a hearing related to budget recommendations and the topic of state aid to conservation districts, which is the state funding we receive as matched county funds, was recommended, pending final budget approval, to receive an increase of $100,000. This will give each county in Kansas just short of $1,000 more in funding, attempting to get us back up to that full $25,000 match we're approved for. This was very good news, and the work of the legislators who supported the recommendation were very honored that we were there that day so they could tell us in person of the potential increase in funding. During the February board meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved Roy Dunn to serve as the 2nd member at large representing Franklin County on the Lake Region RC&D Council. This was documented in our minutes, and a letter was also sent to Derek for documentation to the county. There were 51 attendees at our prescribed burning workshop on March 6th. We worked with Franklin County Emergency Management, and Alan Radcliffe gave a presentation during the training. Other presenters included K-State Research and Extension staff, the National Weather Service, NRCS, and Farm Service Agency. We received many positive comments back about the event. The Conservation District hosted our annual local work group meeting. Local work groups are important because they provide recommendations on local and state natural resource priorities and criteria for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's conservation activities and programs to the NRCS Kansas Technical Committee. The local work group focuses on agricultural interests and natural resource issues that exist in the community. The local work group meeting helps ensure that conservation needs assessments to identify priority resource concerns is developed using community stakeholder input. I began working with Adam Grimm, the City of Ottawa's stormwater coordinators, to discuss ways that the city's MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit might overlap with projects we are doing and will be implementing through the Middle Mendocine RAPS project beginning July 1st. Adam attended our board meeting last week and discussed with the board and shared information on the city's stormwater system, some of the best management practices they are promoting, which includes rain barrels, rain gardens, and bioretention cells. We look forward to seeing how this collaboration will continue to grow. I received a request from Appaloosa Elementary to provide enhancement lessons focusing on the water cycle and recycling, which students were already learning as part of their state assessments. I visited the school twice during the first quarter and presented an incredible journey through the water cycle lesson on my first visit, and recycle relay with 30 second graders during my second visit. I represented Franklin County at the Mendocine Regional Advisory Committee, the Kansas Association for Conservation and Environmental Education Board of Directors meeting, where I was elected as president-elect. I was invited to speak at the statewide Women in Ag workshop about the services and programs of the conservation districts across Kansas. I was also asked to prepare a presentation for our KACD Employees Organization statewide training coming up in May, related to using websites and social media to promote your conservation district. I received an invitation in March to participate in an environmental education leadership clinic with the North America Association for Environmental Education through an EPA-funded grant coming up in June. So it's been a very busy first quarter, and there's no sign of things slowing down. Even as wet as it's been most of the winter, the Conservation District has been able to provide administrative assistance towards the implementation of $89,000 worth of voluntary conservation practices through 2 conservation stewardship program contracts and 5 environmental quality incentive program contracts. We work directly with K-State Research and Extension to provide funding for 40 soil tests during the first quarter of 2019 and have funds remaining for additional tests to be completed before the end of state fiscal year on June 30th. The wet weather created a major impact on conservation work this past winter, so we still have $42,873 worth of projects under contract through our state-funded water resource and non-point programs. Again, we are waiting on field conditions to improve like everyone else, and hope to complete field visits to begin ranking our state fiscal year 20 cost share applications for new funding that will become available on July 1st. Lastly, the Conservation District Board compiled our 2020 Community Partners Funding Request, documents, and presentation. While the board realizes the figures are not finalized until late August when the county budget is approved, they are happy with the tentative approval of $45,000. The board appreciates the support of the commissioners for our funding. Busy. So, any questions? Yeah.
Do you work with KDOT on erosion problems along their highways as far as fields?
Not typically. We work a lot with Jeff here in the county. And so if he's working with KDOT, yes, but we don't get calls specific from KDOT for project work. I think they have engineers on staff.
Problems with KDOT as far as erosion? You haven't had any?
Not specifically that have been mentioned, no. So the other thing that I didn't put in there, just we've had a lot of calls this last couple of weeks on industrial hemp and people that are wanting to know more and wanting to try to get it planted here in the county. And so all of those questions we're sending up to Kansas Department of Ag. They've had several meetings and workshops, but it was really surprising when we were talking the other day how many calls we've had about that topic. So, and surprisingly, back to your first question about the erosion on the roads. I asked Kent, our technician, and I don't think Jeff's been in since the first of the year on anything major. I think everything was just so bad, the roads themselves, and so they didn't have other side projects. But probably this spring, I mean, he's normally in once in a while with specific projects if they're replacing culvert pipes and so forth. We do those drainage studies for them to know how many acres of water are coming down through a culvert. So we haven't seen him too much yet this year.
No questions for Kim. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, building public comment. Okay, consent agenda, the only item on the consent agenda today that needs approved is commission meeting minutes for April 3rd. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson? Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, takes us to item business. Our first item of business, consider approval of rezoning application 1901-1645 to rezone approximately 33 acres from an A1 agriculture to A2 transitional agriculture.
I guess I am number one.
You are number one. Actually, you're number two also today.
Unfortunately. Good morning, Commissioners. You indicated the first matter this morning will be consideration of a rezoning application filed by Mr. Stover. This request is to rezone approximately 33 acres from the A1 zone to the A2 zone. The purpose for this is it no longer meets the minimum requirements for the A1 zoning district. There was a land division that took place on approximately 80 acres. The westerly 40 acres has been sold with an existing house. That requirement is exempt from having to go through the process of rezoning and lot split simply because it can be described as a true fractional Hollywood part of at least 40 acres. And it does have access to a public road, even though that road has been declared subsequent to the development of the house as a minimum maintenance road. That road currently serves 3 residences and is not totally in compliance with our requirements today, which would forbid the construction of a residence on a minimum maintenance road. We don't issue building permits anymore. We would have farm structures, but not residences. That is the only real issue that was brought forward at the Planning Commission's hearing on this matter. There was surrounding property owners that were a little concerned about, in the event a house is to be constructed on this 33 acres, where would they take access? And the only place that the county would issue a building permit at this time would have to access off Florida. You could not access off the minimum maintenance road. I really have nothing further to add unless any of you have questions.
Pretty cut and dry, numerous ones of these. Seems like it fits all the criteria for it, so. There's no more questions. I look for a motion to approve the zoning application 1901-1645. So, have a motion for a second.
Second.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, item number 2, consider approval of a special use permit application 1901-1646 to permit the operation of a rifle range for firearm shooting competitions, firearm safety instruction, and training in an A1 agricultural zone. Sir?
As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a request for a special use permit to allow for this gun range. The county's regulations under the A1 zone do have provisions for the ability to develop non-agricultural related activities through the approval of a special use permit process. This process requires a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and then they forward their recommendation to the county commissioners with whatever mitigation measures they feel appropriate to address concerns to ensure that this facility is going to be in substantial compliance with the surrounding community. The Planning Commission did hold their hearing last month, and we really didn't receive any opposition to this. There were several people that testified in support of it, but this is on the Charlie Porter property. It's approximately 500 acres, about a mile west of town, on the north side of 16 Highway. And the highway is the southerly limits, but this is screened from the highway because of the trees associated with a small drainage that hooks in from the highway side northerly across portions of the Porter property. Meridian River as a boundary on the north, as well as the railroad. And after reviewing this, the planning commission felt it would be appropriate. We've had other ranges that are on less acreage. And based on the information that was provided at the hearing, as well as in the staff report and by the applicant, they found that this would be consistent with the provisions of our comprehensive plan. It did satisfy the requirements of our zoning regulations, and therefore have made a recommendation for approval of this special use permit, subject to the 11 conditions that are attached to the part of the staff report we received. Again, the applicant is here. If you have specific questions you would like to ask of him, other than that, I have nothing further to add.
It is within the flood?
It's in that area, within the floodplain. Pretty good agricultural land, but it does flood.
So what happens when it floods? You get it all laid out with the parking and all that, and then you get the flood on it?
The parking is being provided, and the biggest issue might be the construction of the berms, because they will have backstop berms that are constructed to the NRA standards for each of their target sites for that particular range. But it is all pretty flat, and it's something that has a lot of visibility in terms of being able to see the targets and anything that might cause a problem associated with the operation of the range. It's going to be very, very visible.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Want to come up? Kind of give us an idea what your plans are for this?
Hi, my name is Tim Yoder. I've been wanting to set up a range since I got in the Marine Corps. Basically, there are other ranges like this that are, the closest range like this is probably about 4 hours away, past Salina or past Wichita. I think it'd be good for this area as far as keeping shooting traditions and to serve the local area here. So the range is designed as a precision rifle range. As Mr. Laura said, there'd be a set of burrs behind each target. Targets are arrayed from 100 yards out to a little past 1,300 yards. That's well within the property. We plan to have private membership, so that way we can be sure that people are coming there are safety trained and they know how to conduct themselves on the range appropriately. And we will have small competitions among the shooters.
This could be something that you'll open up maybe for the public and every so often, like sight rifles and so
Yes, sir.
forth or whatever.
Yes, sir. We'll do range days where people can come and shoot their rifles. And so, I mean, just for people, some people just want to do it once a year, you know, because they're preparing for a hunt. You know, they don't have the nearest ranges around here are only allowed about 200 yards. And that's about the longest I've seen. There's a private range up by DeSoto. They do 300 yards. And so I felt there's a need for a longer range. I shoot competitively. There's a lot of people in this area that shoot competitively, and I think the county would benefit from that.
Larry, when you had your public, did you have any neighbors that came that made any comments about it at all?
We had several people in attendance, but no one was really opposed to this. I had a couple phone calls from surrounding property owners, but once they found out specifically where it was and what all was being proposed, there was no objection. There were, I think, 4, maybe 25 people that testified in support of the range.
What, Tim, what caliber rifle are you gonna be shooting 3/4 of a mile?
Honestly, the goal for the rifles are light recoil rifles. They're not big magnums. Specifically because, you want to be able to spot your impact. And if you miss the target and it hits, and the target, and, you know, your bullet hits the berm, you want to be able to adjust accordingly. So a lot of the rifles are generally like, compared to like a 243. So they're smaller, less recoiling rifles.
What's our maximum distance of a shell?
I mean,
Just in case they missed the berm, how far is it gonna go?
well, I mean, we took that into consideration with the berm design. Our farthest berms are 20 foot tall. And, I mean, these targets are less than 20 inches. And, the farthest I've ever seen anybody miss one of these targets is maybe 3-4 feet. I mean, these guys are, experienced shooters, and, they are, I mean, we've never had an issue in any of our competitions in our shoots. So with the starting at 100 and going out, they're just not gonna go out there and shoot the farthest target first. So they're gonna start close, and they build their data as they go out on their, from nearest performance on their distance. So that way it is conducted in a safe manner.
You have a rifle.
One of these rifles, you're gonna be shooting it regardless of the county. This is probably the most controlled, safest place to do it.
Right, and so I've talked to guys, and, you know, and I've got 20 acres, and I shoot my 300 Win Mag, that bullet goes who knows where. And a lot of people, I mean, I hear my neighbors shooting, and I know they don't have berms, you know, so.
Bear Gazette has a healthy bluff on the other side of it, and then there's the railroad, which is built up out of the
Right.
floodplain beyond that, another quarter mile before there's any houses, so.
There's a good bit of land behind it, and then also the trees along that river are 40, 50 foot tall, and that's part of the recommendation with the NRAs to have a vegetative barrier, which also helps control sound and would also stop the event if you get serious an issue.
That's gonna be farm ground during the summers. How you gonna manage your targets? You gonna drive out?
So there is the 500 acres is split, and they have a drainage section down the middle that goes from north to south, and there's an access road on there. And so we're gonna place our berms along that access area, and then work with the farmer and to not disrupt their farming on that.
You gonna be shooting off these cargo boxes?
Right, so that's things that we've done in the past to elevate you, and it also creates different shooting positions. So, and actually, I've shot off a few. Some of them, they'll build like a deck, and the deck kind of wobbles a little bit, you can feel it. So those cargo containers, it not only adds storage that we can use for the range, but we can also build a deck on there so that we can have a railing and stuff, so it's safe, and it gives a really good stable platform.
Questions for Mr. Yoder or for that?
Thank you.
We have no more questions. We'll look for a motion to approve the special use permit application 1901-1446 to permit the operation of a rifle range, firearm shooting competitions, firearm safety instruction, and training.
Make the motion.
Motion is there a second?
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stollmeyer?
Yeah.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Thank you. Those two didn't minute. Okay, item number 3, consider awarding bid for county trash service. Brandon.
bid the trash service for the county. And after those initial bids, I went back to Gardner Disposal and Ottawa Sanitation with a revised dumpster sizes and pickup schedule. When I received those bids back, the lowest bidder was Gardner Disposal, so it's my recommendation that we go and award this bid to Gardner Disposal for our pickup service and for them to start that on May 1st.
These fees good for more than 1 year? Is it a 1-year deal?
We haven't signed a contract with anyone yet. I mean, if we accept the bid, the next step would be to reach out to them and ask for an agreement. On trash service, we would, especially with a new vendor, I would probably ask for just a 1-year agreement, just to see how it goes. So, yeah, those prices would be locked in for a year. And then one of the provisions in that contract would be, does it automatically renew? Basically, how does renewal work? Most of the contracts we have with our partners usually provide some parameters for them to raise their prices, so it might be, 5% each year, but until I have that in front of me, I don't know. But that is a document that would come back in front of you all as well, so.
These are still substantially higher than what we were paying a year ago, aren't they?
I believe so. I didn't see
Yeah.
And I do, Commissioner Dickinson, tend to believe that we were getting an incredible
Yeah.
deal for a number of years. And I can kind of flesh out how this process went if you would like, but so when we put out our RFP, we had a specific schedule in mind. And so we had 3 people who responded to the bid, but Ottawa Sanitation and Gardner Disposal were the 2 that were really the only realistic 2. The other was substantially higher. And they both responded to our RFP. Gardner Disposal's bid was lower pursuant to our RFP, what we asked for. They both submitted their recommendations though, which weren't based on our RFP, they were just what we thought we would do. So once we got those, Brandon and I looked at them and thought, we didn't even know that 4 and 6 yard dumpsters existed. So I told him to go back to the drawing board and come up with now that we have that knowledge, come up with a revised schedule, revised frequencies, etc. Once he did that, I asked him to send it back to Ottawa Sanitation, Gardner Disposal, get a bid on that schedule. He did that. Gardner Disposal was the lower bidder at that point again. So, hence our recommendation today.
I think we went through all the research and everything, so I make a motion to approve the garbage disposal.
Yeah, have a motion, is there a second to that?
Go second.
Motion is second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, item number 4, consider for approval authorizing the Board of County Commissioners to execute the annual control plan and the eradication of progress.
Commissioners, each year, we are required by state statute to submit basically a plan of action for the work that we're going to do in the upcoming year. That plan is tweaked on an as-needed basis each year. I'm not sure there's any changes from last year other than changing some dates to make it current. The eradication progress report is basically what we did last year in 2018. So it provides information on the budget, expenditures on chemical and
contractual services and that sort of thing. And all of that has to be submitted to the state every year. I'm sure those of you that have been on the board have approved this very same thing about this time each year. And so we are asking for an affirmative motion to authorize the submittal of the annual control plan and the eradication progress report.
Pretty straightforward.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion, is there a second? Motion is second to approve to execute the annual control plan and the eradication progress report.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yeah.
Commissioner Whitmire?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson? Yes. Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, takes us to staff reports. Derek?
I want to talk a little bit this morning about our chip seal project, and I'll invite David to jump in here as he sees fit. But, he approached me here a week or so ago and brought this to my attention, but the county, we try to do 50, 60 miles of roads somewhere in there each year. And given the number of chip seal roads that we have, if you do that on a 5-year rotation, then in the 5th year, instead of needing to do 50 or 60 miles, you only need to do 25 or 30 miles in order to keep everything on that 5-year rotation. So when we brought this in front of you, unbeknownst to us at the time, about half of the roads in that plan technically aren't due to be chip sealed. And so, we budgeted about $1.1 million for this project. I think our bid came in at 980, 990, somewhere in there. We're thinking that, or we're hoping that the cost to keep everything on the 5-year rotation is only going to be approximately half of that. David has reached out to Vance Brothers. They've indicated that they don't believe cutting it back is going to be a problem. At least as of yesterday, he hadn't received a concrete number yet on what it's going to cost to do the 25 to 30 miles. But the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is, given the winter that we've had, this is particularly great news, because we know we've got issues out on Nebraska Terrace. Those are issues we've had for a long time. We've gotten a bid from Kilo Construction to fix that, which I believe is somewhere just north of $50,000. That would have them doing some kind of blade patch maybe, or I don't know. I think it's a little more complex than that, but we know that we have repairs that need to be done out on Rock Creek Road in certain areas. And the other potential for excitement is, we know we have the project up in Wellsville. Time Construction up there, we've been approached by the city of Wellsville asking to partner on the construction of Stafford Road. We believe that the cost to do that would be about $100,000, correct? We think, and I'm not asking for any kind of recommendation, this is something that will come back before you for more extensive discussion, but we think with the savings that we have budgeted for this chip seal project, that we could potentially be a major contributor in the Wellsville project, knock out the Nebraska Terrace and the Rock Creek projects, and probably still have some money left over on what we budgeted for 2019. And so I just wanted to put that out there for your thought. I know David's gonna be out next week. I may or may not bring some of this in front of you. I think the only one that's I don't think any of it's urgent. I know Wellsville is really getting to a point where they would love to know if we're gonna be able to participate. But if it's not next week with me, then the week after when David is back, we'll probably be in front of you to discuss that. But if it's not obvious, this is a very good problem to have. I mean, and David and I have looked at our 5-year chip seal, because one of the things that I was acutely aware of is, okay, if by saving, $500,000 this year, does that just mean we're gonna have to spend $500,000 more next year? But that is not the case. It just, given the mileage that we have in each 5th year, you only need to do about half as much. And so, yeah, you might start giving some thought to if you need more info on those specific projects, we can get it to you. I think certainly the Nebraska Terrace and the Wellsville projects, we've had those before. Yeah, I know Nebraska Terrace, and in my time here, multiple times that's been discussed. And if you drive out there, it's in pretty rough shape. And so, but any questions you have on that, please let one of us know.
Not a question, just a comment. I think we all know that we've had a terrible winter, and it's great to have, and we know that we're probably gonna need more rock than we need on a regular basis. So this is really awesome news that we might have some extra money to be able to make those repairs that we need to do to bring those roads back.
We are actively trying to tie up any loose ends related to the 2019 chip seal project. I've been in communication with the contractor to talk through those things. So I'm waiting on a little bit more information back from them before I know exactly where we stand with that regard. The roads that I had in originally, and looking back at the records, those roads were chip sealed in 2015. So they are technically a 5-year rotation to come up next year anyway. We drove those roads. They are all in pretty good shape, much better shape than Rock Creek Road and some of the others that are more heavily traveled. So I feel confident that the miles that we have slated for this, the 25 miles or so, that will work just fine, and that it won't be a detriment to the other miles that are on the list. So we'll pick them up next year and continue on with our program like normal. This does allow us some flexibility to do some things that really need to be done, that will fix some problems and help out one of our communities. So it does have the potential to be a big impact, positive impact for us.
You mentioned we using some of that to give Rock Creek Road some extra attention.
Yeah, we're seeing a little more truck traffic on Rock Creek Road, and we're anticipating that as the year goes along, the level of semi-traffic is just going to increase. If anybody has driven Rock Creek Road, they know that this winter was especially bad on it. It's partially due to the original construction of Rock Creek Road, the fact that there are numerous rock ledges that we have water issues that are just they're gonna be part of life with that road. You combine all of that with the amount of semi-traffic, heavy loads that travel that road, and we get running, we get potholing, the edges start falling off, and so we really need to take a proactive approach to maintaining that road. I would love to put 4 to 6 inches of new asphalt on top of it, but the cost of that is fairly prohibitive. So this is what I'm proposing to do is some of these areas that we have some significant patching on, we've gone in and it's there. We're not driving over into the potholes, but it is fairly rough. We're going to dig those out and fill them up with asphalt and make it smooth. It's more of a permanent fix than what we could do with our own forces. The blade patching is adequate, but I'd like to take this to another level, because eventually, I do think that we need to start planning for some overlays and that sort of thing along Rock Creek. But that's down the road.
I got a couple of questions. Is this situation gonna make it possible to possibly get Richmond's Main Street done on the equipment? Is the equipment gonna still be out there?
I haven't dug into that. I have got a pretty good list going of things that we could potentially do with the extra dollars. That is certainly on the list and something I wanna take a hard look at, and we can decide if that is appropriate use of those dollars.
And the second thing, I don't know if you checked on this. I know that when the representative from Vance Brothers come and talked to us, when we talked about this K-9, he stood right there and told us that let us go to a 6-year rotation instead of 5.
I'm working on confirming that as well.
Do you remember when we did this and we talked about the different advantages? And of course, we were having some issues with getting it, but he did tell us that one of the advantages it would put us on a 6-year rotation instead of a 5-year rotation.
We will definitely know the answer before we begin next year. And we'll be able to utilize that information and those resources in another fashion. We certainly have more needs that our budget will allow us to take care of the way that they need to.
What's the preliminary plan on Nebraska?
That is, there are some areas that can just be patched, the intersection of Nebraska and Lafayette. That, a big part of that needs to be dug out and relayed. We're looking at putting, I don't have my notes in front of me, but 3 to 4 inches to fill that in, and so that should be much asphalt done. It's not going to be patch material, it's going to be asphalt. And again, we'll get a contractor to lay that in and do it properly. There's some spots on the bed that need to be taken care of much the same way. So that will, I'm not saying that that's going to cure it because it's in a low spot. There's drainage issues that we're not going to be able to solve because of the elevations of some of the nearby residences. But this will certainly improve it for a number of years to come. And then we'll chip seal over it also to provide another layer of protection.
Seal it.
Yep. And so I'm including that in this year's chip seal project, so.
That makes sense, especially when you get those thin overlays
Yeah.
to seal it up, keep the moisture from getting over.
That's
the better
exactly-
layers of delivery.
That's exactly what we intend to do.
And I think the thing, and I think you know this, Commissioner Howard, but please keep in mind that once we have a figure on what kind of savings or difference is there, how every dime of that difference gets spent will be a decision made by the 5 year. And so what we will do is bring you options on, we talked about 3 of them at length. You talk to Larry and he will tell you, and to this day, his favorite part of his job is the Centropolis Sewer District up there. I know he loves it. And I know the road down to that is apparently in awful shape. I mean, that's another project that's gonna need some attention at some point. I mean, I think there are so many projects that we could consider, but, it's establishing that project. Yesterday, David and I and Commissioner Stottlemyre went to a lunch with the Wellsville Chamber of Commerce, and David gave kind of a nice overview of who he is and what he does, and got really good feedback on some of the work that his staff is doing. And it was positive feedback on the roads out in that area. The citizens out there see our people out working, and they complimented us on our snow removal and, things that we take for granted because they're obvious. I don't know that everyone understands. I mean, I can tell you point blank, if David and I could build you the nicest roads that Franklin County has ever seen if you wanted us to. I mean, we could do that. The issue is that's gonna cost a lot of tax dollars. And that's where the difficulty comes in. It's finding that balance. It's doing as much as we can with the resources that we have. And that's where I think your job as commissioners is hard, because you want decent roads. I mean, you want the best road you can get, but we're cognizant of where our mill levy is at, and we don't want to just, skyrocket that. And so it's nice to hear that feedback and know, I mean, that's every department that we have, that is the goal. The goal is to do as much as we possibly can with what we have, because I believe once you're doing that, then do we have enough? Do we have too much? Do we need more? And that's when you make your ask. I mean, if we can get every department to where they are operating at peak efficiency and we know we need more, where, I'm comfortable coming to you and saying, look, here's where we're at. Here's everything we're doing. We just need, so that's really what Janet and I, that's the vision. That's what we're trying to impart on all of our department heads. And as you know, that takes multiple years. It takes multiple budget processes. And so that's where we're at. Speaking of budgets, Janet and I continue to have meetings with department heads. So far, that process is going well. The early drafts of budgets that we're seeing, I'm pretty pleased with. And so, it could obviously change, but as of now, I'm not seeing too many big ticket items that are gonna cause a lot of discussion with the board. I think everybody kind of understands where we're at. And so I look forward to getting that up in front of you guys here in a couple months. That's all I have.
Randy, have anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna update you guys on the jail HVAC project. Those guys just finished that up. So they're just doing some fine tuning things there. But we landed a really, really good week to get that done without having unbearable temperatures in the jail while that was being done. They were without air for about 3 days, I think. But that lifted a heavy weight off our shoulders for that building. So that project is done, and we're collecting bids for the annex parking lot right now. I should be getting those later this week, and the lift station pumps are moving along too, so.
EMS door is
Yeah,
fixed,
after
right?
EMS door is done, yeah.
Clock tower, you've got somebody coming down, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, he's pretty busy right now, but Dials Construction was gonna go ahead and fix up that support leg for us. And a couple weeks ago, we had a guy from Manhattan come down and just give an overall assessment of our clock and the face and all of that. And so he's gonna send me some recommendations on what we can do with that.
What, about the new courthouse, HVAC, convention, I'm sure there's design, it's anything like the jail, there's kind of a design phase before we, send it out for bid.
Yeah, so we'll be taking a look at that one next probably and making a plan on that.
I think Brandon and I have identified that as kind of the county's next major need. But obviously, we're gonna need a majority of you to tell us to move forward on that, just because that's gonna be a big one. And I think Janet and I need to sit down with Brandon and look at the overall budget and just see where we're at after this first wave of repairs gets completed. But
Makes sense, I just didn't know the design, of that be relatively cheap, inexpensive, and something that we could contact, even if we don't do it, we need to give it that salary.
very true. Thanks.
Larry, anything else?
I want to speak on behalf of Central Sewer District. I want to thank David and his crew for getting some rock so that we can get the people that do the sampling. And we've got our core sample full and submitted to the state, so hopefully we're not going to receive any repercussions from the state because we didn't get it there in a real timely manner, but I want to thank David for getting some material on that rock so we could at least get our team down there to pull the sample. Still need some work though.
It took us actually a while to get down there because we had to wait for the ground to dry out a little bit to even allow our vehicles, our grader, to get down these areas because of how that sits. So glad we're able to help out. We'll get back and straighten it up. So I wanted to give you a quick update on some of the projects that we have going on. The Proximity Park, Kingman Road, and Montana Road, those are nearing completion. We have agreed upon substantial completion by May 11th, which is about I think they were supposed to have substantial completion by April 1st, so you can see they're about a month and a half behind. The weather, and it would have been good for us to push them to put concrete on that soil, the soil conditions that existed, but they are making great progress. I was out there the other day, they're putting sidewalks in and finished the intersection and doing some of those things. So that is progressing finally. We should be substantially complete by May 11th, and they'll be totally done by the end of May. The Highway 59 and Kingman Road intersection, we are planning to start advertising that project this week. KDOT has reviewed the project multiple times. I think they've inserted some new people into the project, which they have their own evaluation methods, so we've had some back and forth with them. But we are expecting to be able to start advertising this Friday, which puts the bid date about May 14th. And we would expect roughly 30 days after that to begin construction. So middle of June, that should be in construction. They're out there right now moving utilities. If you've driven that way, you've seen TCP&L or Westar, Evergy, whatever they're calling themselves now. They're setting new poles and getting ready to take the old poles out of commission, that sort of thing. So that is ongoing. Pawnee Road, we've got a bridge there that we've been working on getting replaced. KDOT has that on the May letting. So again, if we let that in May, it'll probably be in June when that work gets going. So we're going to have quite a busy summer just in construction projects. That's on top of all the road patching that we're doing and all the gravel road maintenance that's underway. Also, if you recall, you approved the biennial bridge inspections. That work, they will have inspectors in the field starting next week to inspect all of our bridges. And once we get the report, we will start working out through the list and taking care of work items on our bridge things, which we've already been doing some of that, and discovered a little problem the other day, and we've got somebody coming to take care of that for us so that it's not a safety issue. So we remain very busy. Next week, I will not be here. I'm going to be attending the NACE conference, which is a national conference that just happened to be having it down the road in Wichita. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to go and listen to the national speakers and learn from something on there. And then yesterday we attended the Wellsville Chamber of Commerce and hope to continue doing that sort of thing, trying to get around to some of these smaller communities to attend at least their city commission meetings. Okay, that's all.
I sent an RSVP this week to Neosho County for our Southeast Kansas meeting. The only commissioner I heard back from was Dawn on that. So, but that's May 21st. If anyone's interested in going to that, please let me know and I can add you to our RSVP.
also, on that similar note, Tammy got a block of reservations for the KAC conference, the annual conference in November. I don't have specific dates, but we just blocked like 10 rooms, so you all might just start thinking about whether or not it's in Wichita this year. So, you know, when it's in Kansas City, I don't know that we all use the rooms, but when it's down there, we typically do. So you might think about, it's no rush because we've got plenty of time to cancel them, but you might start thinking about whether or not that's something you're gonna wanna go to.
Okay, at the end of this month is the one in Junction City, is it just Roy and Downsville, correct? So that's not gonna affect any of our meetings or anything. Okay, it takes us commissioner comments and board reports. We'll start.
Yeah, like Derek and David said, we did attend the chamber conference meeting yesterday, and I thought the chamber really appreciated someone from the county, kind of, you know, with a real knowledge of what's going on, to list them and not only explain to them, you know, a good overview of his, the numbers of his department, the numbers of jobs they need to do and have to do. And we was a luncheon, and when David got done, I said, well, if you really want to hear everything David does, we'll have to pay for something too. So, you know, because there's just so many things that he could talk about, but he tried to hit the important ones, and I think that they were very pleased that somebody of his stature in our group had come to them and laid it all out the best he could for them, and they appreciated it very much. I went to Wellsville, or excuse me, I went to Wellsville tonight. Went to Lane City meeting the other night. They're still working with the health department on a couple of the grants to help improve their park, put in sidewalk. They passed a no smoking ordinance in their park, which is part of their grant to help qualify for the money. And so they're working on both those issues. They do have actually, I didn't get the details on it, but they have a new home going in the city of Lane. So I know they issued the sewer and water permit for hookup. So that's always a good sign in a small community, any kind of building or anything going in. I have been talking through the RC&D with Don Teskey, which is the National Vice President of the Veteran Farmers Coalition, and we're trying to establish one, kind of what brought the idea when Roy joined us and head of the Vietnam Veterans Association here, that Farm Bureau and Kubota right up the road is two of the biggest money sponsors of that program. So I've been talking with him, and sounds like I'm going to get him in here on May the 7th in the commissioner's room here. I'll be an RC&D meeting beforehand. We're going to have an open forum for him to speak to anybody that wanted to attend. Don's also state president of the Farmers Union Association also too. And I've heard him speak on several projects with him. And hopefully I'm going to let him have the floor here and talk to everybody that has any questions or answers. And he's really big into the Veterans Farmers Coalition. And I'd like to hopefully we can get something started in Eastern Kansas with them. That's all I have.
Last Wednesday, I met with the local emergency planning board. It's great to know that there are different agencies across the county that are proactively planning for an emergency that we hope never happens in Franklin County. But, planning is a lot of it. And on a side note, I took Red Cross training this weekend, which I will potentially be able to respond to fires in the area and even become a disaster relief volunteer. And then yesterday I got to spend the day at one of our partners at the Old Depot Museum and took a fourth grade class to the one-room schoolhouse for the day, which was a beautiful day. We got to have recess outside and had our pail lunches, and it was a great day.
Okay. Last night I attended Richmond City Council. They had a gentleman come in and wanted the city to replace this culvert. He said it was rusting out. They had a long discussion about whether they were responsible for the culvert, and they couldn't find anything to show a policy, so they discussed that quite a bit, what they were gonna do about that, and how they're gonna get a policy on the culverts. They had another person come in about his water bill, a past water bill, and they talked about that for a while. And they talked about getting uniforms for their city employee and moving away from the company that they now use for uniforms, and just giving him clothing allowance to buy his own uniforms. Talked about putting the trash dumpster out at the ballpark, which is out at Richmond Lake. And they had a young man come in, I don't have his name, it's out in my car on the agenda, but I forgot to bring it in. But he's with the Boy Scouts, and he's doing a project out at their ballpark. They're putting new bleachers in, and he's drawing up the plans for that. Seems like he's put a lot of work and effort into it as a Boy Scout project out there for new bleachers. And that's the only meetings I've been to since the last meeting. I did get a message from Pat Vining. She's in charge of the museum out of Richmond. She sent to all the commissioners, just basically thanking us for the money that they get each year from the Visitor Center. She said she sent it to all of us, and a couple came back, so she didn't think a couple got it, so she wanted me just to pass on a thank you to the commission and Derek for the money that they get each year to help with the museum. And that's all I've attended, but I do have something I want to bring up. It happened Monday. Derek, you might look into this a little more. Had a gentleman get a hold of me. He was in his pasture. His pickup caught fire. He called 911. 30 minutes later, he had not heard from anybody or seen any fire department. So he called back to 911, and they advised that no one responded from the Williamsburg Township. So they were thinking about calling Richmond. So they called Richmond, and Richmond responded. He said it was right at an hour and a half before anybody was on the scene, and his pickup totally was gone. He said that it wouldn't have mattered, probably if Williamsburg had got there instantly, that his pickup was gonna be gone, but it might be something you talked to Nick about looking into, because he said it was 30 minutes when he called back, and they hadn't called anybody else. They hadn't heard from anybody. And I don't know what the reason Williamsburg had no one respond, but anyway. So you might just talk to Nick and see what that whole situation was.
And if you give me the individual's name after the meeting.
I'd like to make one more comment. I did have somebody say something to me about the dump day and the Ottawa. There's some confusion. I think a lot of people don't get the newspapers anymore. You know, they thought that when it was the Ottawa, the dumpsters were out at Ottawa, that's when the free dump day was, and the dump was closed, and so there was some confusion. I'm not sure how we get the information out there, so people really, is this the first year they, so maybe that was it, that they aren't, I mean, I think the small communities know, okay, yeah, this is when we have the dumpsters, but there was some confusion. Anyway, somehow.
Ottawa has done this in the past. We tried to, I don't really know how to describe it, be a little bit more open to their weekend, but we've been talking over the last few days about things that we need to visit with them about. So next year, we hope that things run a little bit smoother and things are handled in a little bit different manner.
Okay, upcoming, we have a study session on next Monday. At this point, no one has anything else, and I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.